My name's Glen Merzer. I'm an author. I went vegan in 1992. Now, I had first gone vegetarian as a 17-year-old in 1973. But as soon as I went vegetarian, I had an obese aunt and uncle who were alarmed. They were very worried that I wouldn't get my protein. So they said, "Glen, what are you going to do for your protein?" And I said, "I don't know, I guess I'll eat cheese." So very stupidly, I kept eating cheese. It was the only animal product I ate. Didn't eat eggs or fish or anything else, but I ate cheese just for my protein for about 19 years until 1992. And at that point, I started getting pains around my heart. Now, there's a lot of heart disease in my family. I never met my grandparents because of all the heart disease. And I had lost a couple of uncles to heart attacks, and my mother had heart disease. I had gone vegetarian in the first place because of all the heart disease, and now I was getting pains around my heart, and I thought, this is so unfair. I'm a vegetarian and I'm still getting heart disease. And then I thought about it, and I thought, now wait a minute, why do I not eat meat? I don't eat meat because of the saturated fat and cholesterol. What is cheese? Cheese is saturated fat and cholesterol. Cheese is liquid meat. So I gave up cheese. I never had a pain again, never went to the doctor, never thought about it again. I just went vegan and everything was fine.
Wow. Now, did you notice any other physiological, mental, or emotional changes after doing that?
Well, I can't say that I did, because remember, I started at 17 and I had no health problems at the time. I was fine. But I just didn't want to be middle-aged at 25. And then when I developed my first health problems, those pains around my heart, I gave up cheese and didn't have any health problems again. And now I'm 67. I've never taken a pharmaceutical drug in my life other than an antibiotic on a couple of occasions. And I've had excellent health.
Now, any emotional or mental changes there?
Emotional or mental changes?
Yeah, sometimes people get, they claim you might get brain fog or something as a vegan.
No, you don't get brain fog as a vegan. No, it's the healthiest diet imaginable. Now, you have to remember that it isn't just being a vegan that makes you healthy. It's being a whole foods, low-fat vegan. You don't want to have donuts, vegan donuts, and soda and, vegan junk food. You want to have whole foods. Being a vegan just defines what you're not eating. So you're not eating meat, you're not eating dairy products, all to the good. But it doesn't define what you are eating. What you have to eat to be healthy is whole plant foods.
Now, I imagine there must be some sort of challenges along the way, especially going that far back. Like, what kind of challenges did you have to endure?
I didn't find anything challenging about giving up meat, and I didn't find anything challenging about giving up cheese. What I found challenging was giving up oil, because the processed food industry is based around unhealthy foods. It's around sugar and oil. And basically, once you decide you want to be healthy and you don't want to have oil, you have to realize that you need to prepare most of your foods at home. They're just, when you go to the vegan section of grocery stores, there's oil, and very often coconut oil, which is the worst of these oils, in all the packaged foods. So you just have to avoid these packaged foods and make potatoes and sweet potatoes and brown rice and whole grains, and have fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and legumes and whole grains, and you're good.
Nice, nice. So what's a typical day of eating look like?
Typical day of eating, I almost always have cooked cereals for breakfast. Buckwheat cereal, oat bran or oatmeal. So a whole grain cereal, and then I fill it up with as many berries as possible, and I serve it on a bed of greens. And so I'm getting greens and whole grains and fruits with my breakfast. Maybe chop up a pear or an apple, and I just love having breakfast.
Is that the whole day?
Oh, the whole day. Oh yeah, well then there's lunch. Then there's lunch. I like a tempeh sandwich, and again, you add what I call the fortification foods that give you fortification against disease. So you add, let's say you're having a tempeh sandwich, but you add greens, you add cucumbers, you add radishes, you add scallions, whatever, you eat as many, or you just have a salad on the side, or you have a sweet potato on the side. That's lunch, and then dinner. My wife Joanna is an excellent chef, so sometimes she prepares the dinner. Sometimes she's tired and she tells me to prepare the dinner. But we might have rice and vegetables, rice and lentils, the pasta and vegetables. But there's always a lot of vegetables with dinner, mushrooms. You know, most Americans apparently have trouble having 5 to 7 vegetables a day. And we'll have 10 vegetables in our dinner. And you think, what's hard about this? You just have to eat human food.
How do you define vegan?
Well, vegan is defined as no animal products, right? And I guess avoiding wearing, or trying not to use animal products in any way. From the health perspective, of course, my initial reason was not to eat animal products. But, in terms of trying to prevent the cruelty to animals, then one has to strive not to use animal products in any way.
How much of this is ethical for you?
It's a complex question, because the truth is that I became first vegetarian and then vegan for health reasons. So I can't say that I became vegetarian or then vegan from my concern for the animals. So I share the concern for the animals. It just wasn't my initial reason for going vegetarian or vegan. And I'll say this, in my mind there was always a distinction. Some people would say that it's morally wrong to treat animals the way we do. And I agree with those people. For me, it was more emotional. That is, I just found it emotionally abhorrent what we do to animals. It's just, to me, it's repulsive to think about how we treat the pigs and the cows and the chickens. I make a distinction between something seeming emotionally abhorrent and being morally wrong. In this case, I think it's both. But for me, it was the fact that it was emotionally repulsive to think about it that amplified or that strengthened my determination not to eat animals for the health reasons. Because, just the thought of how we brutalize these animals was abhorrent to me. I refrained for many years from ever arguing to other people, don't kill animals, it's morally wrong, even though I agree with that argument, because I didn't like to be lecturing other people. Being moralistic towards other people and saying to them it's wrong to kill animals. I believe it's wrong to kill animals, I just didn't like to say that to other people. But now I understand something that I didn't understand then, which is that this practice of animal agriculture is destroying the planet. It is the leading cause of climate change, and it is presented in the media as just a minor factor. And the media presents the case, which is not true, that the leading cause of climate change is the burning of fossil fuels. The burning of fossil fuels is the second leading cause of climate change, and it's a distant second. They are not factoring in land use. They are not factoring in that 40% of the earth is being devoted to animal agriculture. And so 40% of the land on Earth could be rewilded, and with all the new forests that we could regain and all the vegetation that we could regain, we could sequester enough carbon dioxide to end the climate emergency. And it's the only way to end the climate emergency. There is no way mathematically to end the climate emergency just by focusing on fossil fuels. We've been focusing on fossil fuels for 30 years, and we're burning more fossil fuels than we were 30 years ago. So at what point is this insanity going to end, that we think we could reverse the climate crisis just by talking about fossil fuels? It's impossible. When you put in solar panels on your roof, it's all to the good. It creates clean energy, but it doesn't sequester carbon dioxide. So even if tomorrow there was only clean energy in the world, and there was no airline industry, and there were no 18-wheelers burning fossil fuels, and all the energy that humans used was clean energy, no fossil fuel burning, the climate would keep heating up. And it would keep heating up from the deforestation, which is done to facilitate animal agriculture. It would keep heating up from 1.5 billion little methane factories we have in the world, which is called cows. They're belching methane, which is over 100 times as powerful a greenhouse gas as carbon dioxide. It would keep heating up from the methane and the nitrous oxide attendant to animal agriculture, from the manure from animal agriculture. So you cannot end the climate emergency unless you end animal agriculture. It's just painfully obvious. So why does everyone in the media and why do all our leading climate spokesmen only focus on the burning of fossil fuels? This is insanity. The only way we reverse the climate crisis is to end animal agriculture. So there's the moral argument that I make. I've always been uncomfortable saying to people, you shouldn't eat animals, it's wrong to kill animals. Because if they feel that there's nothing wrong with killing an animal, they want to eat their bacon, I don't know how I could convince them otherwise. But if they want to breathe, if they want their children to breathe and their grandchildren to breathe, we have to stop animal agriculture. So there's the moral case that I feel comfortable making, because for whatever reason, I was always uncomfortable confronting people on the morality of killing animals, even though, yes, I agree, it's immoral to kill animals.
You ever tiptoe around the word vegan, like not use it?
No. I'm proud to be a vegan. I believe that we need a vegan transformation of the world, and I'm proud to use the word.
How much information did you have to support the health aspect? Did you just intuitively know this, or did you have a doctor tell you this, or some science or something?
It certainly wasn't a doctor. It's a great question. I really don't know the answer, except I certainly didn't read a lot of books when I was a teenager about heart disease or anything else. I think I intuitively knew it because if you look closely at a hamburger, it looks like a heart attack. But I think it was more than that too. I think it was common knowledge. Even back when I was a teenager, I think it was common knowledge that meat causes heart attacks. We have studies going back on this back to 1948. We know the mechanism by which meat causes heart attacks, saturated fat and cholesterol, and people have known this for a long time. So I just think it's unquestionable. Heart disease is just a man-made, human-made disease. We're just eating our way into this disease. Very few people have heart disease because it's a genetic condition that is just bad luck. Almost everyone who gets a heart attack eats their way into it, and they do so by eating animal products. Now, it doesn't help to eat oil, and it doesn't help to eat sugar. So there are a couple vegan products that can contribute to heart disease. But for the most part, people are eating their way into heart disease by eating animal products.
Could you be with somebody who is not vegan?
Yes, I could be with somebody who's not vegan if they are like checking my coat, but I couldn't live with somebody who is not vegan.
And do you live with somebody right now who is or is not vegan?
I live with my wife, and she is vegan.
How long has she been vegan?
She has been vegan since shortly after marrying me. When she married me, she went vegetarian, and then shortly after that, she gave up the cheese.
So how did you manage to get into a situation where you're with somebody who wasn't vegan or even vegetarian, and then, how did you manage to persuade them? I imagine you had something to do with this.
From the time I met Joanna, she had a good attitude towards the fact that I was vegan. She wasn't skeptical about it at all or hostile to it at all, but she was not vegan at the time. But from the time she was a child, she was interested in herbs and the healing power of herbs. So I think it made sense to her that since she always loved herbs and believed in herbs, and herbs heal, that maybe eating plants is a good idea. So I think she was open to it. And I said, you know, if we're going to get married, I hope you'll be vegetarian. And she said she would be. And then shortly after that, she went vegan on her own.
So you didn't have to be manipulative in any sort of strategic way beyond that?
There was no arguments over it. It was easy.
How long did that take? Because, you know, a lot of people find themselves in this situation. There's not a lot of vegans out there to choose from. So any tips or tricks there, I'm sure would be invaluable.
You know, I just think that given the climate emergency, we can't afford to be shy vegans. You know, I was a shy vegetarian when I never talked about being a vegetarian because I was never interested in converting other people to vegetarianism. And then when I became vegan, for the first few years, I was never interested in converting other people. I was doing it for my own health. And then with Howard Lyman, I wrote the book Mad Cowboy. And I learned from Howard Lyman, who was a fourth-generation cattle rancher, turned vegan and animal rights activist. And with Howard, we wrote the book Mad Cowboy. And I learned what Howard had done to the land as a rancher, ran a feedlot operation in Montana. Since then, I have felt that it's so important that we save the earth. It's so important that we save the rivers and the streams from animal agriculture. It's so important that we save the air and the climate that we can't be shy vegans. So to get back to your question and dating and trying to find a partner, go out and find a partner who's not a vegan and make them vegan. You know, we need more vegans. So anything you got to do it. But we can't afford to be shy vegans anymore. And if you're dating somebody who's not vegan, you know, just say to them that that's unacceptable.
I'm curious, did you have any pets or...
I did not.
No, let me start over.
Okay.
Did you have any companion animals growing up?
Is pets a bad word? I never had a companion animal. Let me ask you a question, turn it around. Do you know who the first vegan in history was? The first vegan was a caveman who discovered that it's easier to sneak up on a plant.
Prior to going vegan, did you ever think there's no way I could do that?
No, no. And you know, when I was 17, I went vegetarian. I had made up my mind to go vegetarian the first day of summer vacation after my senior year in high school. And I got up in the morning and I had an English muffin with jam for breakfast, and my old buddy Dave called and I said, "Hey Dave, congratulate me, I became a vegetarian." And he said, "Since when?" And I said, "Well, you know, since breakfast." And he laughed at me. And that was 50 years ago, and I haven't had any meat since then. So I think it probably helped that he laughed at me. But the point is, I never thought for a moment that there was any chance that I would ever turn back. I just didn't even consider the possibility. So no, I never considered turning back from being vegetarian. And then when I went vegan, I knew that when I gave up cheese, I was never having cheese again. And there was just no question in my mind, and it's the easiest thing to do. So there's really nothing difficult about this except for other people. Other people make it difficult. Your family members who pressure you to eat meat, the Thanksgiving dinner with the turkey, I don't know, if you go to work and at the workplace they're having pepperoni pizza. You know, you go to a restaurant that doesn't cater to vegans with a group of friends. It's other people, it's society that makes this difficult. This is not difficult to do when you're preparing your meals at home. There's nothing hard about opening a can of beans or preparing beans, preparing lentils, having rice, having whole grains, having vegetables, having tofu or tempeh. There's nothing difficult about that at all. You can have pasta, you can have bread, you can have all kinds of things. The difficult thing is other people. Other people are the problem. You have to surround yourself with vegan friends, make more vegan friends, Marry people who aren't vegan and turn them vegan? Marry as many as you can? No, you can't do that. So, you know, that's the problem. The problem is other people. I'll make an analogy to the nutritional science. The nutritional science is absolutely clear. There really are no legitimate scientific studies in 100+ years of scientific studies. There are none that show any benefit to flesh foods or dairy. But we're not in a battle between science and science. There really is no science on the other side. There really is no science that makes any serious case for eating animal foods. We're in a battle between science and culture. And so the cultural forces are so strong to try to look for some way. You'll find articles in popular magazines all the time about 10 superfoods to eat. And 9 of them are always vegan. It's always berries and mushrooms and onions and nuts and seeds. But they have to find some, so they say fish. You know, they have to find some animal food because the cultural forces are so strong that they can't be advocating a vegan diet, so they always find fish. And are there any scientific studies that back that up? Not really. There are scientific studies that show a lower incidence of sudden cardiac death from people who eat more fish. But those studies are done on the general American population. Those are people who eat more fish and less red meat. You don't get any benefit from eating fish if you're already vegan. So it's just that fish is better than red meat for avoiding sudden cardiac death. Any scientific study that's done on thousands of people who are self-reporting what they ate is a study you have to take with a grain of salt. People don't report accurately what they eat. You try to tease apart the data when somebody is a vegan but is having vegan donuts and is having white flour, and somebody else is a meat eater but is eating 5 servings of vegetables a day, you know, and you try to, and then you got 10,000 people and you try to come to conclusions about that. It's nonsense. The way to do a study is the way Dr. Esselstyn did his studies. He took people with severe heart disease, he put them on an optimal whole food plant-based diet with no oil, a low-fat, healthy, whole foods diet, and he reversed heart disease. So I would say, if you want to find a benefit to fish, take one group, put them on the Esselstyn diet, and take another group and let them eat fish. They could have fish all day long. They're not going to top the Esselstyn people. Have a specific diet. If you're going to do a study, have the people in the study be motivated to eat a certain diet.
Yeah, pit the best side to the other side.
And try to just top Esselstyn. Good luck to you. You can't. And they never will do studies that way because they know they're never going to be able to top Esselstyn. Then they do a study of 20,000 people self-reporting what they eat, and they try to tease out the data to try to show that there's a benefit to, you know, to eating bacon. You know, it's nonsense.
Do you think cultural pressures are a significant reason as to why some people claim they were vegan and no longer are?
I don't understand it, and I'm disturbed by it. But I imagine that it's mostly because, or maybe exclusively because, they didn't go vegan correctly. They ate vegan donuts, they shopped in the grocery store for vegan processed foods, and the diet came up lacking for them. Well, it's no wonder. Were you having sweet potatoes, brown rice, corn, legumes? You know, if you're not eating a whole food plant-based diet, sure, the diet isn't going to work for you. I have never known anybody who did it correctly, who didn't get great health results and stick with it. It's not just a struggle to get more vegans. It's not just a struggle to overcome the health crisis in the country. It's a struggle to save the planet. When you think about all the cultures around the world that make the same stupid mistake of eating animals and eating dairy products, it's daunting to try to think, how the hell are we going to reverse this? You know, I write books to try to make the case, and I've got to get 8 billion people to read the books, to learn the lesson. There are cultures all over the world that are meat-eating cultures. you know, and you have everything from French cuisine, you know, to whatever they're eating in the Middle East, to the China.
And the more we see them eat more meat, the higher their chronic disease rates.
Right, and people just get fatter and fatter and sicker eating this stuff in my own lifetime. Now, I'm getting old, but I'm not that old. But, you know, when you think of it in geological terms, humans have been around, you know, something like 30,000 years. In the last 40 years, I've seen Americans get so much fatter and sicker from eating animal foods and processed foods that it is just unbelievable, the level of obesity. When President Obama introduced Obamacare, there was so much strife in the country over whether we should have Obamacare, and the people against it, you know, said that there were going to be death panels and it was going to destroy health care in America, and the people who were for it said it was going to give Americans health care, and they called it health care. It wasn't health care, it was health insurance. And it was actually a pretty good program for health insurance because it saved people a lot of money. But did people get healthier because of it? Well, we've had Obamacare now for, what, 12 years or so? And we have probably 20 million more Americans with health insurance because of the law. So I guess that's a good thing. But obesity was at 35% before Obamacare, and now it's at 42%. 7% more obesity in 12 years, which means that if more people are going to the doctor, they're still getting fatter anyway. Half the time their doctors are overweight or obese. Obviously, going to the doctor is not a good strategy for fighting obesity, and it isn't a particularly good strategy for, you know, optimizing your health. You don't want to be relying on doctors to stay healthy. I wrote the book Own Your Health to make the point that we have to take our health in our own hand. We can't be relying on doctors to make us healthy. What makes us healthy more than anything else is eating human food and only human food. And human food is whole grains, vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts, and seeds. And when you eat human food, and only human food, you stay healthy, and you could avoid doctors most of the time, and you won't care whether you have health insurance or not.
You know, I'm glad you qualified what human food is, because I didn't want some people to get the wrong idea and think you're talking about eating humans.
No, do not eat humans. That's a mistake.
There's a learning curve here, right? It might be a good idea to get that out there, that there is a learning curve to this. When you go vegan, you're doing it for a philosophical reason, or maybe you're doing it for health reasons. Don't think you're going to get it right overnight, right?
I guess that's right, but it isn't that hard. It isn't that daunting. You know, everybody has to find what's right for their body. Some people do better with more raw foods. Some people do better with more cooked foods. You know, some people do better with oatmeal. Some people do better with buckwheat. You know, so yes, you know, if all these foods are new to you, it may take some time to adjust. But the main thing is, when you just determine that you're not going to eat animal foods because animal foods cause inflammation and animal foods are not natural to the human body, and you just determine that you're going to try to avoid processed foods as much as possible. So if you're going to have bread, have less processed bread, have whole grain or sprouted whole grains in the bread. Don't have white bread, you know. Try to limit yourself to eating foods as they're grown, as they come out of the ground or off the tree. Eat natural foods. And, you know, there are all kinds of vegan cookbooks with recipes. I've done books with Chef AJ. She has great recipes, and there are hundreds of other books with great recipes. So that isn't so hard. I don't think for most people that's that much of a challenge. What is a challenge is if you're working 8 hours a day and you're at a workplace and the only restaurants around don't serve healthy meals, then you have to bring your lunch with you. You know, other people and restaurants and the culture make this difficult.
Yeah, I mean, because most people live a pretty hectic or fast-paced life. They're distracted by things that aren't natural, and then now they got to spend time in the kitchen preparing legumes, grains, greens, fruits, veggies, mushrooms, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices. They got to get a good variety there. That's ideal. It might be second nature to you, but somebody who's used to eating the same meat, eggs, and dairy every meal, that's a monumental leap for some people, I think. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
In the end, it's simple.
Yes, in the end, it's simple. Let's say you have pasta. You boil water and you put the pasta in the pot, and you cook the pasta, and then you can have a tomato sauce, or you can have other sauces that, a mushroom sauce or whatever. And then you add vegetables, and then you can add beans. This isn't difficult.
You've mentioned climate change, and you got a book on climate change.
This is my book, Food is Climate. There's an image on the cover in red. Those are pasture maintenance fires set on one day. This is a satellite image. So as you can see, they're set all around the world. These fires that ranchers are setting to burn everything the cows don't eat. It happens day after day after day. And what you'll see on this satellite image is a patch of brown that goes for 6,000 miles, from the Sahara across to the deserts of the Middle East, to the Thar Desert in northern India, to the Gobi Desert in China. 6,000 miles of near continuous desert. Now, how did that happen? Did the Earth just make a mistake and put 6,000 miles of desert there? Well, that's where agriculture began. That's where civilization began, in that stretch of land, 6,000 miles.
Isn't that also the equator?
Yes, well, some of it is along the equator, some of it goes north. But this is where so many of our great civilizations began, and when civilizations and agriculture began, they began chopping down trees and grazing goats and sheep and oxen and cows. And we began burning the land and turning it into desert. That's what animal agriculture has done to the planet already. And of course, now we're burning fires in the Amazon. And so deforestation is really one of the leading causes of climate change. And deforestation is caused mainly by animal agriculture. If we would just stop clearing the land for the animals, for us to eat, which is the stupidest thing humans can do, and just leave the land alone and let it heal, let it rewild. We don't even have to plant the trees. They'll plant themselves. We could get from 1 to 3 trillion more trees on the planet if we just say that, no, we're not going to cut off all this land and fence it off and make it for cows. We could reforest those lands, revegetate those lands, and we could sequester enough carbon dioxide to end the climate emergency. And that's the only possible way we don't melt. The climate emergency is so stark now that it is just extraordinary to me that people could have the arrogance not to make this change, because it really is arrogance. It's arrogance to think that we're going to come up with some kind of technological fix. We're going to have carbon capture. The arrogance of thinking that let's just keep doing what we're doing and come up with a technological fix. So we'll have carbon capture machines, or we're going to build walls, build seawalls high enough to protect our cities from the melting of the ice caps. Or we can just stop stupidly eating animals. And when I say stupidly, I want to emphasize this. It's extraordinarily stupid to eat animals. I want to say that again and again and again. It's extraordinarily stupid to eat animals. And the reason I want to emphasize this point, and let me make clear that I am not calling the people who eat animals stupid people. Obviously, there are all kinds of geniuses in the world, far smarter than I am, who eat animals. I am not calling people who eat animals stupid. I'm calling eating animals a stupid thing to do. So there are brilliant people, there are geniuses out there. There are scholars and wise men and women who stupidly eat animals. It's just the stupidest thing you can do. Now let's talk about why it's so damn stupid. And again, smart people do stupid things. It's so stupid because we know the science. Again, there are no legitimate scientific studies that show any benefit to any animal food, period. That's number one. Number two, we vegans, we outlive you guys. So we know that we're in better health, we outlive you. And we know that we have better body weight, we have better blood pressure. Whenever they do a study on blood pressure, the vegans do the best, the vegetarians do the second best, the meat eaters do the worst. Now, are we designed by nature to have high blood pressure? Is there somebody, some wacko out there who wants to make the case for high blood pressure? We know that that's not optimal. So there is no health case for eating animal. We know that humans will be healthier if they don't consume animals. That's like, we know that hot air rises. We know that eating animals is unhealthy. It's done. The science is in. There is no case. There are just quacks out there making the opposing case or trying to make money off books to eat the caveman diet. But there's no science for it. But in addition to the health aspect, then there's the fact that we know that carbon dioxide and the other greenhouse gases are melting the planet, melting the ice caps, causing the wildfires, causing the droughts. So we know that we are eating our way not only into our own death, but into the death of the planet. What could be stupider than to keep doing that when all you have to do is abstain from eating animal products, which is the easiest thing in the world, and make yourself healthier and give the planet a chance. You know, and then we have pandemics. Yeah. Has there ever been a pandemic caused by zucchini farmers? Every pandemic is caused by people eating animals, by animals being put together in close spaces, which obviously breeds disease. So did we enjoy the COVID pandemic? Did anybody out there enjoy it? Do you want to have now the bird flu pandemic and the pig flu pandemic, and one after another, all caused by the stupidity of eating animals? And then we have the antibiotic crisis. We're wasting all the antibiotics on trying to keep the animals alive when they're in close quarters. And so we have antibiotic resistance. So now we're not going to have medicines because of the stupidity of eating animals. Let's not be shy about calling stupid stupid. You know, my vegan friends, vegans are gentle people. A lot of vegans became vegans because of their concern for the animals. Probably the majority of vegans become vegans because they are good, kind people who care about killing animals. And so vegans don't like to call other people stupid. And they may object hearing me say that it's stupid to eat animals. But again, I'm not calling people stupid, I'm calling what they're doing stupid. And we all have to say it. It's just remarkably, amazingly stupid to eat animals and thereby destroy your own health and the planet and cause pandemics and cause antibiotic resistance and foul the waters and pollute the air and have lagoons of manure across our beautiful nation. It's just incredibly stupid. Just think about turning over 40% of this non-ice land surface of the earth to cows. Why? Who made them the supreme animal? Why would we want to turn over 40% of the earth to the cows? What if I said, no, let's turn it over to the raccoons? I mean, who made the cows the dominant force on Earth? Did you know that cows are now the biggest fish predator on Earth? We rape the seas, bring in all this fish, and we feed it to the cows. And then we take the cow manure and we feed it to the chickens. And we take the chicken manure and we feed it to the cows. There's a wonderful symmetry to animal agriculture. But it's the stupidest thing ever invented. So we have to stop doing it. And you know, the animal, they call themselves farmers. Not sure that's the right term for people who raise animals, but the animal farmers, they may be good people. I'm sure most of them are good people. We have to give them useful work. We have to get them out of the animal farming business and you know, give them mushroom farms or let them raise food. Because the thing is, it's not really farming when you take 10 pounds of food in the form of grain and come out with 1 pound of non-food in the form of meat, that's not really farming. They're not creating. Farmers should be people who create food. These are people who cost us food. They're reducing our food supply. How is that farming? They're food reducers. So they take chickens and they cram them in a warehouse. What does that have to do with growing bok choy? You know, they're not farmers, they're chicken crammers. So, you know, we have to give these people a useful livelihood.
I live in North Carolina. There's like as many pigs as there are people in North Carolina. But there's a lot of
there's
chicken.
Probably more pig shit.
And there's, you know, a lot of chicken CAFOs. But the people who own them, I know a few people who own them or who have relatives that own them, they don't even want to eat that.
They go in the evening and they see the dead chickens and they have to pick out the dead chickens. It's a horrible way to make your living. And some of them, you know, they get taken advantage of by the big chicken operations, and they almost become like indentured servants because they have so much debt. It's a horrible way to make a living. We just all have to do anything we can to help those people get out of that awful industry.
Yeah. So you've been vegan and prior to that vegetarian for so long. How do you stay positive in such a non-vegan world like this?
I don't know that I do stay positive all the time, but I think I am by nature optimistic. I try to be optimistic. I have a good friend named Dr. Silas Rao. Silas, whenever I find myself starting to despair, I give Silas a call, because Silas is invariably optimistic. He just says that we're going to have this vegan transformation of the world because we have to. I struggled to believe it, but I try to believe it. But I don't see anything more useful to do with my life than to try to make the case. And so I make the case in all my books. I wrote a novel called Off the Reservation about a vegan congressman who runs for president.
Show us the cover.
Cover is right. The cover is right here. So my novel Off the Reservation is about a vegan congressman who runs for president. It's a comic novel. It's about more than veganism, but I always try to put a vegan angle in everything I write. So even if I write a screenplay or a play, there's usually a vegan angle to it. And then I have my books that are specifically about veganism, like Own Your Health, which is about nutrition, and the latest one, which is called America Goes Vegan, which is about nutrition and the environment. So I'm always trying to make the case in my books and in my plays and in my screenplays, and it keeps me going. It's ironic to me because when I became a vegetarian and then a vegan, it was the last thing I thought about was trying to convince other people. I wasn't interested in that at the time. But now I think that it's the most important thing I can do, is to try to create vegans. You know, those people who have listened to me, who I know personally, their health has always improved and they've always stayed vegan and been pleased that I helped them make that transformation. It's extraordinary to me that so few, as a percentage, such a low percentage of doctors know to do this. Now we have the Plantrition Project and the College of Lifestyle Medicine, so we have more and more doctors who are sort of rebelling against the training that they had, which was training in using pharmaceutical drugs and not learning nutrition. We have more and more good doctors, but still the overwhelming majority of doctors don't know how to do this. They don't understand nutrition. And so they see a patient with type 2 diabetes and they just give them metformin, and they try to teach them to live with their disease instead of to reverse their disease. And it's criminal. You know, it's criminal that doctors don't know how to do their jobs correctly. You know, it's appalling. My opinion of the medical establishment couldn't be much lower. You know, you have all these doctors trained. These are intelligent people. You have to be intelligent generally to get into medical school. Trained, but they don't have the curiosity, they don't have the imagination to say, could this be done differently? Aren't there books out there on nutrition? Why are we not studying nutrition? Is it possible that what you're eating, meals 3 times a day, maybe affects your health? And they're watching what I'm watching. Americans get fatter and sicker every year, and they don't think it has something to do with diet? And then you see studies that something like 40% of doctors are overweight, and 20% of doctors are obese. What's going through their minds? You're not doing your job correctly if you're an obese doctor, not talking to patients about what they're eating. This is appalling.
Yeah, so it sounds like as aware as you are, I imagine it must get dark at times, and for you to resolve that, you just pour your energy into writing and being creative, and you might call a friend who's a fellow vegan, and some people recommend when you go vegan, make a vegan friend, and that's like a good tip, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any other tips maybe for dealing with this, because it can be difficult?
There are any number of vegan YouTube channels and online resources. So there's certainly an online community that you can find. Now, whether you can find a vegan community in your town or city, most cities will have one, but small towns may not. So it does help to reach out and find other vegans. It helps to have that sense of community. And we're just, unfortunately, a little too small a community. I wish there were more of us. I don't know what the percentage is. I hear different numbers between 2 and 6%. It's probably 2 or 3% of Americans are vegan. And only a small percentage of those, frankly, are healthy vegans, because too many vegans are doing it just for the animals, so they're not caring about being healthy. But here's what I say. If you're vegan just for the animals, you're not vegan for health, you're not vegan for the climate, you're not vegan for the environment, you're vegan just for the animals. Okay, I accept that, and good for you for caring about the animals. But even if you only care about the animals, be a healthy vegan, so that you can be a good example to other people, make them want to be vegan. Because if you're going to be eating vegan donuts and you're going to be a 300-pound vegan, you're probably not going to help the cause, right? So, and don't you want to live long to keep fighting for the animals? So, the animals want you to live past 100. So, be a healthy vegan, don't just be a donut-eating vegan. So, learn to do it correctly.
Now, your books, are they all on a website somewhere people could check out?
All my books are available on Amazon. Some of them are in bookstores as well. I have a website at glenmerzer.com, but I don't sell the books directly. You could check out my name on Author Central, and I also have started my own YouTube channel under my name, Glen Merzer.
Do you have any kind of quotes or anything that kind of come up? Or something from your book, maybe?
Let me tell a story that I told in Food is Climate. There's a lobster fisherman, it's a true story, who about a year or 2 ago found himself swallowed whole by a whale. When these lobster fishermen set traps at the bottom of the ocean, they have buoys at the surface, and there are ropes that connect the lobster traps to the buoys, and sometimes they unintentionally trap whales. And so just lobster fishing could kill a whale. The right whales in New England have a declining population. So this lobster fisherman, who apparently never thought much about whether his job was helping destroy whales, found himself swallowed whole by a right whale. And then the right whale, he got lucky, the right whale spat him out, and he came out uninjured. Does a guy like that think about it and decide, maybe that whale spat me out for a reason, and maybe I should get another line of work?
Wait a minute, was that you?
No, but that would be a great ending. We should all think of ourselves in that context. We're given a second chance over and over and over again, but at some point the planet's going to break. How do we know when we hit the tipping point with the climate? We already have, Canada has been on fire all summer long, and this has never happened before. So how are we going to know when we hit the tipping point, when there's no turning back? We've had terrible wildfires in Maui. So many people died in that wildfire. Wildfires in Greece and across Europe. Are we going to just keep doing this? Eating the way we've been eating, using the land the way we've been using it until the fire begets more fire? Because that's what happens. When you have wildfires, you have more carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere, heating the planet, which can cause more wildfires. It's a vicious cycle. So are we going to just keep doing this and keep using the land this way until the planet melts? I'm hoping that that lobster fisherman got another line of work. And just like he, I hope, went into another line of work, we need to find another way as a civilization of eating, which is really not a difficult thing to do.
You know, when you talk about climate change, you talk about it a lot, and actually the documentary I did with Jane Velez Mitchell, Countdown to Year Zero, featured Celeste predominantly. I don't know if you saw that or not. And helping her produce that, I kept thinking, I don't really see this as a convincing thing. It didn't feel like, you know, it was as powerful as maybe the ethics or the health. Me personally, that's just my perspective. But then recently I saw something on PBS about the AMOC. It's the Atlantic, I don't know how to say the second word, Meridian Overturned Circulation. So there's like a cold blob, and it's one of the world's biggest heat sinks. The cold blob's disappearing. And that's like something that's happening really fast. What's the most convincing thing that's in respect to climate change?
Well, with respect to climate change, just think about how many cows are in the world. It's estimated 1.5 billion, and they're belching methane, and methane is a powerful, powerful greenhouse gas, far more powerful than carbon dioxide. So the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, tries to come up with creative accounting to discount methane, because the truth is that methane over time, over 8, 10, 12 years, usually degrades into carbon dioxide and water, which are themselves greenhouse gases. So the instantaneous global warming potential of methane is 120, 130 times that of carbon dioxide, but they say, but since it eventually degrades, let's lower that number. Well, no, let's not. Let's deal with reality. When it is heating the climate and it is continuously being emitted by cows, at each moment, it is heating the climate 120, 130 times more than carbon dioxide. And when it heats the oceans are an energy grid that retain that heat for 100 years. And if it heats the soil and the soil dries up and we have a forest fire, then you don't get to say, but wait a minute, if you had only waited 12 years, that methane would have degraded into carbon dioxide. You don't get to make these excuses. It's heating it now, and it's constantly being emitted by the cows. So what does the industry do? Well, they've tried to come up with masks that the cows could wear. I'm not kidding you. Cargill came up with masks. They want to mask all our cows. They came up with the idea, maybe if we mask the cows and we feed the cows seaweed, we could lower the amount of the enteric fermentation that causes the methane. I got a better idea. Stop eating hamburgers. It's stupid. So if you just stop the foolishness of eating animals, then you don't have to put masks on the cows. You don't have to have 40% of the earth turned over to cows. You just stop the stupidity of eating that. Has anybody in human history ever looked at a cow and say, oh, I'm hungry, I want to bite into that? Nobody is hungry for a cow. Nobody. You look at an apple, you get hungry. You don't get hungry looking at a cow. That's because it's not our food. We're not carnivores. We're not naturally inclined to bite into a chicken or a cow. Yeah, remember when I said it was stupid to eat animals? I think I made that point. I mentioned several reasons why we know from scientific studies. from the fact that blood pressure normalizes and gets more healthy on a vegan diet. But there's also the fact there's our evolutionary cousins, the great apes. We're primates. What do they eat? Well, the great apes are practically card-carrying vegans. They eat a diet that's 95 to 99% vegan. They do have some termites. So if you are determined not to be a vegan for some reason, because you don't want to be with those wacky, flaky vegans, you don't want to join our team, okay, knock yourself out, have a bowl of termites once in a while. But other than that, you know, the science tells us we should be eating what our primate cousins eat. A whole food, plant-based diet. They're not having bacon and eggs for breakfast. They're not having sausages for lunch. It's preposterous to not look at what our cousins eat. You know, the science is so clear, so obvious, that's why I think it's just foolish not to follow the science. At the same time, the science is telling us that it is animal agriculture that's destroying the climate.
Do you have any last-minute encouraging words or anything that we didn't cover that you want to get out there?
It is extraordinary how much healthier everybody can get if they eat a whole foods, low-fat vegan diet. Now, I come from a lineage where the men in my family died in their 50s of heart disease. I have, I guess you would say, terrible genes. They call it hypercholesterolemia. Really bad genes for heart disease. And my cholesterol numbers are not what are considered optimal. I have like 170 cholesterol. I wish it was 130. But I don't worry about that because what is most important isn't the number of your cholesterol, it's the inflammation in your body. And I have very, very low inflammation. There's a test called the high sensitivity CRP test. And my score was 0.28, very, very low. Why don't I have inflammation in my body? Because inflammation is caused when you eat something that's unnatural. If you eat roadkill, there's a dead squirrel in the road and you pick it up and eat it and it's filthy and bacteria-ridden, of course, that's going to cause inflammation. Well, when you pick up some chicken in the grocery store and it's nicely wrapped under cellophane, it's not any cleaner than that squirrel in the road. So when you eat that chicken, you're going to get inflammation, even if it looks nice under the cellophane. If you eat meat, you're going to get inflammation. If you eat dairy, the human beings were not designed to have bovine lactation. It's not natural, so you're going to get inflammation. And inflammation trumps cholesterol. You're better off having higher cholesterol with low inflammation than low cholesterol with high inflammation. Inflammation is from eating foods that are not natural to the human body, eating animal foods. I have kept myself healthy for all these years because I don't eat foods that are unnatural to the human body. I'll tell the story, if you want, of my hernia operation. Now, the vegan diet, the low-fat vegan diet, will protect you from heart disease. It'll protect you as well as you can be protected. It isn't 100% certainty, but it'll protect you from cancer. It'll protect you from inflammatory diseases. It'll protect you from type 2 diabetes. It will not prevent you from sneezing your way into a hernia. And that's what I did. I sneezed about a year ago and said, ooh, and it turned out I had developed a hernia. And I went to my doctor, and he recommended that he would do, well, he was a surgeon. He recommended that he would do laparoscopic surgery and put in a synthetic mesh to hold the repair in place. And I Googled this synthetic mesh, and I'm sure millions of people have it and don't have problems with it. But there are other people, just Google synthetic mesh lawsuits. There are other people who are suffering because they got this synthetic mesh, this piece of plastic in their body. I didn't want it. So I said to this surgeon, why do you use the synthetic mesh? And he said, lower chance of recurrence. And I said, how much lower chance? And he said 50% lower chance. Now that sounds pretty important, doesn't it? Don't you want a 50% lower chance of hernia recurrence? Most people, I think, might be persuaded by that, but I know doctors' tricks. So I said to him, 50%, is that in relative terms or absolute terms? He said, well, I guess that would be relative. I said, give it to me in absolute terms. He said, 1% chance of recurrence if you get the mesh, 1.5% chance if you don't. You see how that's 50%? 1.5% is 50% more than 1%, but it's a 1 out of 200 difference. So why do I want that synthetic mesh in my body for 1 out of 200 chance difference? Not only that, but if you have a recurrence, which could happen either way, would you rather have a recurrence with a piece of mesh in your body with tissue growing around it that has to be surgically removed? Or would you rather have a repair done if you didn't have that problem? So I wanted to get it done, get the surgery repair done, but without the mesh, and I found a doctor 1,000 miles away who would do it. And I said, I don't want the laparoscopic surgery. Why do you have to blow up my belly to repair me in the groin? Just cut me in the groin and repair the damn thing. And that's the way this surgeon does it. And he did what's called open surgery, cut me in the groin, repaired me in the groin, but I was told it's going to be a slower recuperation that way and more pain. So I was worried about the pain. And I can't swallow a pill, so I was told to get liquid Tylenol. So I got liquid Tylenol, drove 1,000 miles to have the surgery done the right way, had the surgery repair done, and I woke up in the operating room and I said to the nurse, there's no pain. And she said, well, of course not. You're under the effect of the anesthesia. Wait till tomorrow, the pain's gonna kick in tomorrow. And tomorrow came and there was no pain. And the next day came and there was no pain. And there was never any pain. I never had to take an aspirin. Now I was cut open in the groin, repaired and sewed shut, and I had no pain. That's because there isn't inflammation in my body. So this is what happens when you eat a whole food, low-fat vegan diet. When I think about all the health benefits of being vegan, I think, Jeff, of a video that you did of a guy who said that on the vegan diet, his doctor told him he has the arteries of a 16-year-old, and that reminded me that my doctor told me that I have the testes of a 12-year-old. You know, there are a lot of benefits to the vegan diet. And we just had this COVID crisis where over 1 million Americans died. There was a study done in the journal BMJ that showed that 72% reduction in severe COVID from people on a plant-based diet, just being plant-based, not optimal whole food vegan. 72% chance of reduced severe COVID. They could have saved 750,000 lives if the Surgeon General, if Anthony Fauci had come out and said, you know the best thing you can do for COVID? Don't eat animals, don't eat dairy, cut way back on the oil, have a low-fat, whole foods vegan diet. They could have saved 750,000 lives. That's a lot of blood on their hands. But this is what happens when you eat a healthy, whole foods, low-fat vegan diet. Your health improves in immeasurable way. And I've seen it work for everyone who's tried it. So if there's anyone listening out there who isn't already vegan, it's so clear. The science is overwhelming. Just do it.